The other three aren't getting sound. And that's what Dylan is working on.
Okay, do we need to give you a minute, Dylan?
Just one.
Okay, let us know. Technology is wonderful when it works.
They just got it.
They got sound?
I think so.
Can we try to roll call to the virtual people one more time?
Okay, let's go ahead with roll call.
Mrs. Summers,
Here.
There we go.
Mrs. Schumacher,
Here.
Mr. Wright,
Here.
Okay, we do have a quorum. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda, which does include some addendum items.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood, excuse me. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign? Motion passes. Right now, I entertain a motion to suspend the board meeting and open the public hearing.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign? Motion passes. We are now in the public hearing. Mrs. Harvey.
Yes. Good evening, Chair Jellicoe, Superintendent McGovern, and board members. I'd like to briefly discuss our budget amendments that we are presenting. So if you would like to put those on the screen, that's one of the addendums. There we go. Thank you. Okay, what we do this every year at this time of year, kind of as at our year-end meeting. And this is a lot of real budget cleanup for our office. So we do this for every fund, and we have to do these budget entries if we cross 1,000 level function codes. And this just kind of gets our books kind of back in balance and cleaned up for our next year. So what you see at our first entry is the general fund. And the first few items of this budget entry reflects like a jetpack reimbursement, correction of our TAP program budget upload, a special service contract increase, curriculum workbook transfer, and then right below this entry is our transfer to the capital projects fund. So if you move down a little bit farther on this one entry, you'll see that there's a space there. And what we're able to do is, depending on our cash balance, we have to keep in mind, we have to stay within a certain threshold of our cash to carry over to the next year. We're able to sweep a lot of this money into our capital projects fund, which is very beneficial because we're able to fund future projects for the district. So the second piece of this general fund entry is a credit to these function codes, moving the money to the capital projects fund. Okay, so if you move down a little bit farther, and I'll discuss kind of a little bit more detail on that when we get to the capital projects fund. The next section, section B, is the special revenue fund. And these encompass our grants. And so this includes, and I'm not going to go through each one because there's lots of activity that goes on throughout the year with budget decreases, crossing function codes, closing out grants. And this just reflects all of those entries for our grants. So if you move down a little farther, and our grant, if kind of you see the grant number is kind of on the left, and then the grant name is right below it. So we do have several grants that, we do have a lot of cleanup for. So if you keep moving down to, I guess one I want to kind of highlight, if you move down to grant number 275, and that's our ARP money. And this budget entry reflects kind of our reclassification of funds for our workforce stabilization, and also a receipt of a contribution from the foundation for a request for Overland Elementary. Moving further down, you'll see all of the BOCES grants, and we do have several BOCES grants. Like I said before, this is all cleanup for this grant on our end. And if you keep moving down, all the way down, one last grant within this special revenue I'd like to address is 29D, and that is Overland Early Childhood Education Program grant. And this is a new one. This reflects a donation from our Sweetwater County Foundation to the Overland Elementary preschool program of $30,000. Okay, our next section is the special building fund, our capital projects fund. And here you'll see the offset of our general fund money. So you'll see the money going into as a debit to this capital projects fund. Any credits you see are reflected of like cleanup work, cleaning up some negative balances. And so what we were able to do with our capital projects fund, we were able to move $6,305,000 for special capital projects fund. And what includes that is we go through and have departments and the schools kind of give us a 5-year plan of what they see in the future, and we try to fund that as best as we can. So we were able to fund technology, approximately $3.5 million, facilities, kind of within the long-range facility plan of $1.3 million, emergency generators, $413,000, classroom FF&E, and this would be for the new high school, $100,000. And then also, which has been very beneficial to the schools, any available balances they have left over in their budget, we're able to kind of sweep that money into the capital projects fund and designate it specific for their school. And the total of that we were able to sweep from the school is $303,000. Other items, transportation, district fleet, $210,000, and print shop for 2 new colored copiers, $199,000. So the remaining amount of a transfer that we were able to perform will go to the food service program. And we'll see that one a little bit later on. So next section, section D, is enterprise fund.
Excuse me just a minute.
Yeah.
Would you clarify the acronym CCLC?
What number is that?
Oh, it's back in, trying to find it now.
21st century.
Okay,
That's a 21st century grant.
okay, thank you.
Mhm. Okay, the next section is our enterprise fund, and this is the food service fund. And this is where you'll see the remainder of our transfer. And it was $140,000 going to food service to help with their 24-year operating reimbursement back to the general fund and to help balance their budget for next year. Okay, moving down, something that was a little different this year, CACFP program, which is kind of our nutrition program. That was all schooled at Overland this year. So we actually accounted for that money a little different this year. So we had it in the 510 fund as opposed to the 530. So you'll see a decrease in the 530 fund and an increase in the 510 fund as a reflect of that accounting change. Okay, moving on to the next section, Head Start. And this is, again, cleanup of some prior year grants that we needed to close out within Head Start and different budget moves, crossing function codes for this year. And we do break all of those funds with a different fund number by year to kind of help with our accounting and tracking process. Last section of this is section F, which is our custodial accounts, our student activity accounts. And this just represents an increase of receipts on a couple schools compared to their budget. And so this is just another cleanup item on our end also. And we report all of these, so you'll see right below the fund number by function code. And you'll also find a link to the Wyoming Department of Education, the accounting guide, and that gives you a description of what every function code means. So as you're looking at that, that's a good reference. Do you have any questions on any of the above entries?
Any questions? Any questions online? Hearing none? Is that it?
That's just, if there's not
Okay.
any questions.
Okay. We have no public comment for the public hearing. Is there any public comment in person on the public hearing on the budget? Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing and reconvene the board meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Item number 7 on our agenda is communications and correspondence or the public comment. If a member of the public initiates specific complaints or charges against an employee, in order to protect the employee's rights to privacy and due process, the board will only hear those complaints or charges in closed session. The board encourages concerned individuals to file complaints using the appropriate district complaint procedure and appropriate forms, which can be obtained from the district's website. As per policies B, DDH, and KD, please limit your comments to the board to one time. If your comments have been previously submitted in writing, please refrain from addressing the board a second time. Written comments will be posted to the agenda in the written public comment section below. Written public comments must be received by 1:00 p.m. on the day of the board meeting and will be available to the public and trustees to view, but will not be read aloud at the board meeting. Policies B, DDH, and KD continue to state, questions asked by the public shall, when possible, be answered immediately by the chairman or referred to staff members present for reply. Questions requiring investigation shall be referred to the board or administrative staff for consideration and later response. There is a written comment that has been posted to the website. Any in-person public comment? In-person public comment. In-person public comment. Seeing none, we'll move on to the warrants. Mrs. Summers, do you have the warrants?
I do. Just let me get over to that.
No
page,
problem.
please.
No problem. Proceed when you're ready.
For the warrants as of June 24th, checks number 168713 through 169045, totaling the amount of $4,180,256.28. Net payroll numbers 803082 to 804775 in the amount of $3,560,175.24. Numbers 129534 to 129555 in the amount of $29,488.71, and numbers 83472 to 83473 in the amount of $9,797.22 for reissued checks number 128934, 129413, 129448, 129503, 129531, and 129545. Check number 4422, transfer to impact aid, total $44,444. Check 618024, general fund transfer to impact aid was $44,444. Checks number 3973467 and 3980263 from the general fund transferred $3,900,000. Check number 3980267, transfer rec board in the amount of $10,000, and check number 3943728, an interest adjustment, transfer rec board, total the amount of $914,060.39. An EFT deposit from the county treasurer in April of 2024 was made to the rec board account and should have been deposited into the general fund account. The total amount includes a deposit of $913,154.14 plus accrued interest of $906.25. This concludes the warrants.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to approve the district warrants and the release of those payments. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. I do want to declare a conflict on warrant 00168-901. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion to approve district warrants and release their payments, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to the let's see, credit card. Okay, that looks like we've got the warrants done. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are matters about which the board has governing policies, implementation of which is delegated to the superintendent. They will be enacted in one motion in the order listed below. There will be no discussion of these items prior to the time of the Board of Trustees votes on the motion, unless members of the board request specific items be held and discussed separately and/or removed from the section. Okay, approval of consent agenda items as presented or amended. B, curriculum. Approval of the purchase of materials and supplies and online resources from Reading Horizons. C, facilities. Approval of the bid to replace the water line at North Park Elementary. D, facilities. Approval of the purchase and installation of playground fall protection at Farson Eden School. E, finance. Approval of the resolution to amend the 2023-2024 budget. F, human resources. Approval of personnel recommendations, and this does include an addendum item. G, transportation. Approval of an added contingency fee for the purchase of 2 new propane buses. That concludes the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Wood. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Summers. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. General Board Business, item number 10. Approval of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, Part B, Local Education Agency, LEA Assurances. Is anyone going to speak to this, or are we? Superintendent McGovern?
Chair Jellicoe, fellow trustees, what you have in front of you is assurances that are required as part of the consolidated grant for the district. Pending approval from the Board of Education, then the district will be able to upload this section to the grant for submission to the Wyoming Department of Ed. And the IDEA refers to, as you can see, for special education. It started last year requiring approval from the trustees prior to submission.
Further questions? Any questions from online? I'd entertain a motion then to approval of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the IDEA Part B, Local Education Agency, LEA Assurances.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. Item number 11 is good of the order. Anyone with anything pertaining to the good of the order?
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Thompson.
thank you. So BOCES 5 I know I've updated you guys before, but we are in the process of updating our bylaws. We do have the proposed bylaw changes completed, and I'll be emailing them before the board for review. And then if you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to pass those along or have Dan Mayer take a look and come and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Any other good of the order?
Chair Jellicoe, if I may.
Superintendent McGovern?
Sure. Just real quick, I want to say a thank you to Scott and Gina and their whole department for the work that they did on this budget. The whole year, getting it ready to go and then closing this out. When Gina made it look really easy tonight when she was going through all of those, but I can tell you the hours that they have put in to make this work for the district, moving money for the capital projects so that we can meet short-term goals, long-term goals. That's a big kudos for this department. And so thank you very much for doing that, and to everyone in your department.
Thank you. Thank you. I do want to address a couple of things. First of all, the vacant trustee position. Last meeting, when we discussed the deadline, we had discussed a 4 o'clock deadline on July 3rd, Wednesday. Being that is the day before the July 4th holiday, it's been suggested that we move that deadline to 12 o'clock noon on Wednesday, July 3rd. So that's how it has been advertised in the legal notice. So those letters of interest, the deadline is noon on Wednesday, July 3rd. The second thing the interviews for those positions will be at our special board meeting on Tuesday, July 9th at 5 o'clock p.m. That's a Tuesday. And we'll be getting that agenda out next week. It is a little bit earlier because we don't know how many people may express an interest, and we want to allow plenty of time for those interviews. The next thing is to clarify the term of the remaining term. According to statute 21-3-108, the term for this appointment will be until November 30th of 2024. And then the balance of that 4-year term will appear as a 2-year term on the ballot and will be an elected position effective December 1st of 2024 and run through November 30th of 2026. So to be clear, this appointment is for the period of time from July through November of this year only. Then a person will be elected to the remainder of that term. Regarding the July 17th, 2024 meeting, which is a different date than our regular meeting in July. At 5 o'clock that night, we will have a meet and greet for Dr. Libby and his wife Laura. So we encourage anyone who would like to come and join us and officially welcome Dr. Libby to Sweetwater County School District Number 1. It is our intention to invite elected officials to the board meeting that will start at 6 o'clock for an update on the replacement Rock Springs High School. Finally, in her last official board meeting, thanks to Superintendent McGovern for her 33 years of service to students and staff of Sweetwater County School District as a teacher, administrator, and the last 10 years as superintendent. Well, that's not quite true yet. I would now entertain a motion to go into executive session for the discussion of legal and personnel matters. Is there a motion?
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Wood. Second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Thompson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Again, it is for the discussion of legal and personnel matters. There will be no action taken upon our return. Dylan, do we still have Cole and Danielle and Andrea on?
I'm here.
I'm here. I'm also here.
Okay, we've got everybody. Okay, I would entertain a motion to return to the regular meeting.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Summers. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes, so we are now back in the regular meeting, and I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Thompson. Second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Wood. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by the same sign. Motion passes. We are adjourned.